So let's take a look on the hydraulic scheme of the most common installation with our boilers. When we speak about more advanced installation, on the left side you can see boiler with, we call it primary circuit, with pump and thermostatic valve. And then we have, of course, buffer tank, and on the right hand we have secondary circuits, two secondary circuits, with each has its own pump and mixing valve. So today we will speak and talk about how to activate the mixing valve, how to activate the pump for the mixing valve, and what is the setup usually used for this kind of heating system configuration. So let's take a look inside the control unit. So this is the main screen of the control unit of the boiler H4EKO and H4EKO-D, our gasification boilers. And the setup for the mixing valve is hidden inside the installation menu, or fitters menu, we call it in English. And inside fitters menu you see valve settings. And there is one valve included the way of the software includes settings for one mixing valve, 230 volts. And you see that you can register more mixing valves. So up to 3 valves can be operated by the control unit of the boiler. One mixing valve is standard, 2 and 3, second and third mixing valve is option. You can buy additional accessories to operate more mixing valves by this control unit. So we will go inside the built-in valve settings. Of course, you have to select the valve state to on, so the valve is activated. And then simply you can select the temperature of the valve. So basically the temperature which the mixing valve keeps and sends to the secondary circuit, to the radiators or floor heating, or whatever type of heating system you have. We can select also valve type. Central heating valve is valve type dedicated to heating of the radiators. Floor heating valve, of course, for floor heating. Only difference is that for the floor heating there is a lower temperature. The maximal temperature of the boiler is, or of the valve is 50 degrees. So there is a protection, so you don't overheat your floor heating. Keep in mind that the valve should be 230 volts, and you can also select opening time, because each producer of the valve has its own time from fully closed to fully opened position of the valve. So usually it's most common number is, as you can see, 100 to 20 seconds. But it can be faster, it can be slower. So check the valve label and select proper opening time. Also, you can also do the registration or calibration of the valve. When you hit this menu, this feature, then the control unit will itself calibrate the valve and check how long it takes for the valve to go from fully closed to fully opened position. So then basically you are ready to go. Keep in mind also that the valve has two phases, two live cables or wires. So inside the control unit of the boiler there is a L1 and L2 inputs for the valve, and you have to properly connect these live wires to make sure that when the control unit wants to open the valve, that the valve will really open, not closes itself. If you connect it wrongly, then you have to reconnect it the opposite way. So always check if the valve is doing the right thing when opening, if it really opens or not. To see what the valve is doing, actually, you can check the main screen. You can go to screen view, change it to valve view, and then on the main screen you can see on the left uh, what is the position of the valve. So right now you see it's 100% open, so you can check the valve itself if it's open or not. Right? You can also change the temperature here by moving this navigation button. Right? Last important thing about the valve is that you need, of course, the valve pump to push the water to the system. And with our control unit, there is a valve or valve pump, which is named additional pump. Additional pump is a third pump we have inside the control unit. First is pump for central heating. Second pump is for the hot water production, and third pump is additional pump which can be configured. So basically, you can select the way of the operation of the pump. So it doesn't have to be valve pump, but one of the options for the additional pump is that it can be valve pump. So to select the additional pump, you go again to the filters menu. Inside the filters menu, you will find additional pump settings, and inside the additional pump settings, you go down and there is a valve pump selected. So right now the additional pump is selected as a valve pump. So in practice, it works in a way that when the valve is opened, also the valve pump is running. When the valve closes itself to 0%, then the pump will stop as well, because there is no need to push the water around the system when the valve is closed. Regarding this function, there is actually feature which can dedicate to the valve the minimal opening. Because sometimes you don't want the valve to be fully closed, sometimes you want. So it depends on the system. When the system has a lot of water inside, sometimes it's better to keep the valve opened a little bit, so there is flow of the water, of the hot water around the system. When the system is new with a small volume of the water inside the system, then it is possible to close the valve fully, because when it opens again, it takes less time. It doesn't take too long to heat up the system. Hope this makes sense. But if you go down, you will find here function which is called minimal opening. From the factory, it's actually selected to 5%, so the valve will never close itself fully, so the valve pump will always run even when the valve is close to 5%. If you want to force the pump to be stopped, then change these parameters to 0%, and then you are sure that the valve pump will stop when the mixing valve is closed. There is also another way how to close the valve, and that's by the room thermostat. So by the room, if you have inside your room a room thermostat, you can close the valve or switch off the valve pump when the room is heated. So imagine situation that you have on your room thermostat 22 degrees, let's say, room is heated, you don't need any more heat inside your radiators, so the room thermostat will send a signal to the mixing valve to close itself, And when the valve is closed, then of course the pump will stop as well. So first you will select the room regulator type. Standard room regulator means basic on-off thermostat, non-voltage thermostats, which you can buy almost anywhere, commonly used with gas boilers. And the Tech RS regulator is little bit advanced thermostat we use and sell for our boilers. The advantage is that the RS regulator can see all the system, so you have access to your boiler, to your components of the heating system from your living room, and you can connect this thermostat online, so you can see what the system does on your phone. So that's the advantage of RS thermostat. Let's say we have RS thermostat, and then we can select the drop of the temperature for the valve. You see the maximum drop temperature is 40 degrees. So if there is a valve temperature selected, let's check what's the valve temperature. Selected set temperature of the valve is 50 degrees, and the room regulator temperature lower is 40 degrees. So when the room thermostat says do not heat, the room is heated, then the temperature of the valve will drop down by 40 degrees. So from 50 to 10 degrees, which basically means that the valve itself will start to close. And when there will be 0% opening on the valve, of course, the valve pump will stop as well. Really simple way how to stop the heat flowing to your heating system when there is no need to heat up the system. Keep in mind also that the gasification boilers are usually connected to the buffer tank, so the boiler can still heat up the buffer tank to build up the heat inside the buffer tank. And when there is a request from the room thermostat to heat up the rooms again, the valve will open, and valve will use, or heating system will use, the preheated water inside the buffer tank to heat up the rooms and the heating system. So this is how it works. Speaking of mixing valve, there are actually two protective functions, let's say. There is a return protection, which is not used when the valve is used for secondary circuit. But let me do this scheme again. If you use the mixing valve instead of thermostatic valve on the left side on the primary circuit, then you can use it with the return water protection function and select, let's say, 65 degrees as a minimal return water, which goes back to the boiler. By this way, you want to keep the water which flows into the boiler from the system as hot as possible, so the boiler is not cooled down by cold heating water, and you protect the boiler as well against corrosion, because when there is big difference between outcoming and incoming water in and out of the boiler, then you risk that corrosion can happen inside the boiler. So usually we say 65 degrees return water is the best. So if you use mixing valve instead of thermostatic valve here, you can select minimal temperature, which will be kept by the mixing valve in the boiler. As you can see, 65. Of course, with more advanced installation and with combination of the buffer tank, we usually recommend to use simple thermostatic valve on the left side on the primary circuit, and mixing valves on the right side of the buffer tank for the secondary circuit. So that's that. And There is also boiler protection. Again, if activated, you can select the temperature. And to explain it properly, again, if the mixing valve is connected on the primary circuit, this is the case when you use this function. And basically, when the boiler overheats for some reason, the mixing valve will open to push the water into the buffer tank or push the water into the system to cool down the boiler. And the valve will be opened till the temperature of the boiler drops down below 80 degrees, and then the valve will return back to its original position. So this is basically protection of the overheating of the boiler. Keep in mind that the boiler has cooling loop inside, temperature sensor inside, so there is more ways how to cool down the boiler, more ways how to protect the boiler against overheating. So this function can be switched off and used only if the mixing valve is used on the primary circuit instead of thermostatic valve. All right. So that's it basically for the mixing valve. There is also single stroke function, which basically tells you how fast the valve is opening or closing. So for example, if you use floor heating, then we usually recommend fast reaction of the valve. So when the water inside the floor heating is heated up to dedicated temperature, the mixing valve should close itself as fast as possible. So by increasing this number, you basically make sure that each step will take, for example, here 40% of the full range of motion of the valve. So each 30 seconds, in reality, the valve will close or open itself by 40%. So basically, by two steps, which takes 1 minute, the valve should be fully closed and fully opened. But keep in mind, of course, the construction of the valve is important here. As I said in the beginning, that most of the valves open or closes in 1 minute 20 seconds. Some valves can be faster, some valves can be slower. So for floor heating, I recommend a little bit faster valves to make sure that it will close itself as fast as possible for floor heating, and do not overheat the floor heating. So that's it about the mixing valve. Next time we will see each other with the next episode about something else about our boilers. So take care.